Welcome to the Heart to Heart podcast with me as your host, Sinead McKiernan. In this episode, I speak with Dr. Wim Hof instructor and breath coach, Christoph Geiger. We discuss breath, how powerful it is, Buteco, the Wim Hof method, the importance of being vulnerable, and the importance of awareness. I hope you enjoy. Welcome, Dr. Christoph Geiger. I'm so happy to have you here on the Heart to Heart podcast.
Good morning, and thank you for having me, Sinead.
You are a general practitioner based in Cologne, a GP. You're working with mind-body medicine, and also you are a Wim Hof instructor. You have studied the Buteco breathing method, so Buteco breath instructor as well, and oxygen advantage instructor. So anyone who doesn't know what they are, you'd be studying under the excellent Dr. Patrick McKeown, based here in Ireland. So you've taken that work with you over to Cologne, and you're working, helping people in all aspects of their well-being.
At least I'm trying to, yes.
So your work as a GP at the minute, you mentioned that you're working in mind-body medicine, mind-body connection as well. How did they kind of integrate into one another or weave into one another?
Well, actually, it's hard to really integrate it in the healthcare system as it works right now in Germany. So the only possibility to do that is to go into the private sector. We've got a private health insurance in Germany, which covers about 10% of the population here. And working in private healthcare basically invites the possibility to work in depth and do stuff like mind-body medicine, which is basically a big term and incorporates a lot.
So it's similar in Ireland. It's hard to integrate the two. I was speaking to a nurse friend of mine this week about when she was in Vancouver and she walked by a centre. It was an integrated health centre, and she just ran in and said, sorry, I'm not a member or a client here, but I just need to know what's happening in here. And it was a lot of integrated kind of modalities under one roof, and she just was really excited by it and thought, we need this in Ireland. I don't know, have you come across any centres like that in Germany?
There are some, but I only know them from the outside, to be honest.
Yeah. What are you mainly seeing in your GP practice at the moment? What's common?
Well, right now, lots of infections.
Yeah.
Like chest infections, for sure. COVID is there again.
Yeah.
And but the interesting part here is also to incorporate like self-healing practices. There are some breathing exercises Patrick McKeown taught us. So there are many things you can do on top of what modern medicine teaches.
So if I was a patient coming to you with an infection, would you give me that little nice nugget of wisdom to practice my breathing exercises as well as the medicine that you?
For sure. There are some small breathing exercises you can really talk about in any consultation. But when you want to go in depth, I really would recommend to work with a breathwork coach to really get the breathing mechanics, the physiology behind that straight.
That's lovely. It's such wonderful prescription to give out to patients. And it's something that it's not new. It's not modern. I guess there's more science backing it up now. And even from my own yoga practice, I know that the wisdom of the breath is ancient, and it's like it became lost in society as we made things more difficult for ourselves, and we forgot about the simple, beautiful gift that we have, that is the breath. And it's one of my favorite topics to study, practice, talk about. And I think it's one of your favorites as well. So let's dive more into the breath. And all the amazing benefits that it can give us, and it's so accessible and it's free. And I know Patrick McKeown would have mentioned this as well, and I think it's in that Breath book by James Nestor, that it's one of the areas that isn't studied or looked at in medicine. That's quite fascinating, that it's not a specialized area. And we have all these specialized areas like the heart, and we have our psychotherapists that we might go to if we have mental health issues, but breathing it's just been overlooked. It's interesting, isn't it?
Absolutely agree. I mean, there are two things to mention here. First of all, James Nestor's book Breath was eye-opener for me too. And I wished I had learned something like that in my studies, but I didn't. And on the other hand, like more science backing up what breathing exercises can do, there's a big discussion on what is evidence-based medicine, right? So on the one hand, we got the studies, but for big studies, you need a lot of funding. So and there's basically no breathing lobby or yoga lobby. I've done research on mindfulness-based stress reduction and yoga and the effects on hypertension, for example. And I had to conclude, we did a meta-analysis, we had to conclude that there was very poor quality of evidence. There just aren't enough studies. And if you consider how guidelines are created, they look at the evidence, and when they got X amount of studies, they put it into the guidelines. So yoga is not in the guidelines, breathing exercises are not in the guidelines. And the question to be asked here is, how do we define evidence-based medicine? Is it just what we see in studies? Or is there something like anecdotal wisdom, like when someone experiences that there is something that really helps him or her? Can that also be interesting? And I would really say it can be interesting to incorporate both. And when it comes to breathing, yeah, here, there, you got your diaphragm with you, you got your lungs with you, you got your nose with you. Like Patrick is talking about the nose all the time, and I love it. So basically, considering the breathing as your remote control to tap into your nervous system, that is so powerful, and we should encourage people to use it more.
I love that so much. You're handing back the power to people again, that you don't need the evidence and the studies and the guidelines to show you and tell you. If you can feel it yourself, you will know.
Absolutely. I mean, a big misconception here is when people come and see a doctor, they are considered experts and they want to hear what the doctor tells them. I mean, the person who knows oneself best is oneself, right? So consider yourself as an expert and just seek advice to further optimize your health. That should be the way to go, in my opinion, at least.
I love that so much. I want to give you a big round of applause. And that is my mission in my work as well, is to empower people to take charge of their own health. And even after a nice, relaxing, hopefully, yoga class and meditation, and I tell people, check in with how you're feeling, and hopefully you feel the peace and the calm that you have created. I didn't create that for you. You created that yourself. I can guide people and you can guide people from our expertise, but it comes down to each individual to experience how they're feeling, and with more awareness, to know their body and to take the power back, to reclaim their own power within. Let's take a little walk over to the Wim Hof world. And for anyone that's listening that doesn't know, Wim Hof is a Dutch motivational speaker, ice man guru. He will have popularized the kind of cold exposure in recent years and ice baths. And I know he had his own personal struggles, which brought him to yoga, and kind of he dallianced with the cold and running in the snow and jumping into cold lakes, and found great benefits from it. And there's 3 pillars to the Wim Hof method. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
So we're talking about the breath, cold exposure, and
The third one is mindset, to connect them all.
to connect them together. So in the Wim Hof breathing method, it's kind of sending your body into a hyperventilation state. What are the benefits of doing that?
Well, that's a hot topic in
Yeah.
recent days, at least, talking about hyperventilation exercises. I mean, there are some benefits where we got some studies on, but yeah, we actually would need far more looking into what really happens there on the physiological side to see what really happens. Doing hyperventilating exercises changes the blood chemistry, basically, by getting rid of CO2. And that also has effects on how the oxygen supply in the body works. And basically what Wim Hof is talking about is alchemizing the body. And he wants to go in a mode of deep relaxation and deep meditation, basically. What we do in here is mostly lying down with the Wim Hof basic breathing exercise, and get like a full workout for the autonomous nervous system. We got in changing, like it's with waves, you got the hyperventilation part, which is basically a big stressor. Then you hold your air after an exhale. Then you tap into the parasympathetic, the relaxating part of the nervous system. And then you get back to a low oxygen environment. And by doing that, you really got the stressors coming up again. So it's a workout for the autonomous nervous system. You got several health benefits from it, but it's also quite intense, and not everyone should do it.
Yeah. And you would really want to practice with somebody who knows what they're doing.
Absolutely.
I do see that it's become so popular, and maybe even seems like a bit of a fad, or a trend. And I know a lot of people that are maybe attracted to more extreme things would be attracted to this as well, but I rarely see enough caution around it. And I know from my own experience with anxiety and panic disorder that if I had to attend a Wim Hof workshop, it may not have been the best thing for me to do at that time, because I was already over breathing and in an anxious state. So around, the cautionary side of it, people with anxiety or even, blood pressure issues or heart issues should really, maybe tap into more gentle breathing and learning functional breathing again first before trying something like this.
Absolutely. I would consider the Wim Hof breathing a tool to really get that strong workout for the autonomous nervous system. But it's very important to look at everyday breathing. If you just go for the Wim Hof breathing every day, and yeah, the rest of the day you don't really breathe functionally, that is a big problem.
Yeah.
And I absolutely agree with the very masculine energy around the Wim Hof method. It's like, you can do this, and like, and a lot of pushing over limits sometimes.
Yeah.
And that is dangerous too. So I do workshops with my brother together. He's a Wim Hof certified instructor too. And we incorporate other elements to really get a decent and a safe environment to do that. And also got like a health questionnaire to make sure that there are no contraindications. And if we see someone, for example, with anxiety issues or panic attacks, we really make sure to do exercises to smoothly get into the Wim Hof breathing, and always encourage our participants to go with their own feeling. And that is sometimes not easy because some people are not used to that, to really feel where they are at. And so sometimes it's challenging, but we try our best to establish a safe environment, and not go full on with the Wim Hof breathing in our workshops.
Yeah, I've met your brother Stefan, so I definitely recommend both of you as instructors if anyone's in Cologne, or hopefully you'll come back to Ireland and maybe do one. We have another wonderful instructor based in Galway here, Sean Kenny, who I know you would have met in your trainings as well. So maybe we will all have one in Ireland together soon. And yeah, definitely choosing a trusted, experienced facilitator in that regard, I think is really important. And also another note on that, I think people may not consider is how their life is at the moment. And I think positive stressors are great, and getting out of your comfort zone. So you're not always in this safe, warm, easy environment. And then when stress does come, because it will come, that's the nature of life, you're not completely thrown. You've dealt with these stressors, and that's what jumping into the sea is for me. And I find when I'm in the sea, I'm in this really beautiful meditative state, and I'm totally immersed in nature, and it's kind of like a spiritual practice for me. But it's also wild in Galway for most of the year, so getting into the sea in Galway, it does create that real stress. And when you come out, you're like, yeah, I've overcome that, so I'm ready for my day and I'm ready for whatever comes my way. So in that regard, I think a positive stressor is amazing and useful. But I'd also wonder as well, if someone is in a really high state of chronic stress, and do they need to lean more into maybe restorative practices first to regain the balance? How would you feel about that?
Absolutely agree. I mean, what I see a lot in the doctor's office is people who are performing and who are really high performers. So they got their job. They're in a managing position, for example, and they do their 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And then in the evening, when they've finished work, they go spinning and go with a HIIT training and go
Yeah.
like 110% again. And then they have migraines and they feel depressed and they feel like they're really struggling to get that relaxating part in. So that is one of my favorite questions. Basically, I ask it every patient: what do you do as active a relaxating exercise in your everyday life? And like 95% of our patients are like, oh, well, TV, does that count? It's like it's really hard for people to see and feel what how powerful relaxating exercises are. So that's a big one.
Lucky patients that are coming to you and being asked that question. Yeah, I think it is a missing it's a missing aspect of health and well-being in society at the minute, because it is all go, go, go and achieve this and goals and be better, be more. But also just be is very important. And it brings us back to that a restorative state brings us back to full health, because when the body is relaxed and there's stillness, healing can happen. And it's something that's not talked about enough, is just proper rest and relaxation. And a lot of people don't even know what that means, because similar to you asking that question, I would ask the same with especially when I'm doing workplace well-being events, and ask about stress and how does it show up in their body for them and what do they do to relax. And I'm often met with blank faces. And even one man recently that stands out, I asked the group, what does stress look like for you and how does it show up in your body? And he didn't understand the question. He was so confused. I said, headaches, digestive issues, fatigue, it's all stress related. It blew his mind. Didn't even consider this before, as these issues were linked to stress. Um, he said, I don't think I have any. And I said, well, maybe you're either a Zen monk and you experience no stress, or you don't have much awareness of how you are at the minute, and you might be caught in a state of, high stress. And then what do you do to relax? And yeah, like that, it was, I go out for dinner with friends and I, go to the movies, but that's still being highly stimulated all the time. And
Yeah,
we don't have enough quiet time and proper rest. Proper healing occurs then, really, isn't it?
totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I experienced that myself. I worked in intensive care during COVID. Basically, had my 80-hour work week, and then back at home, I needed to be in quarantine. So totally isolation and really working a lot. And that was basically the time when the ice bath came in for me
Mm.
to really get back and tap into my own feeling, because I was numbing myself, because of the work was intense, like 1/3 of the people dying basically, whatever we did. So there was no way to change that setting. And yeah, for me it was the really the high energy Wim had at the point, like, yeah, tap in. For me it was really getting into the cold, and then by discovering the breath work, I did the deep dive there and read James Nestor's book.
Mm.
So I think for many people, it also needs a level of, or to find a proper level to meet them where they at. Because I always say, like, meditation is not a beginner's exercise. Because yeah, there are many people who try meditation and
Mm.
then say like, oh no, that's nothing for me,
Yeah.
right? So really to get some tools like the breathing, for example, or a stressor like the cold, to really bridge that gap until you really get familiar with how you feel, what you're thinking about, and to tap into that relaxation part again.
That's excellent advice, because it's a big jump to go from a state of high chronic stress to sit in complete
Mhm.
stillness and silence, trying to focus on what?
Yeah.
Like, your body won't even be comfortable being still for a few minutes if you're coming from a high state of stress. So that's a beautiful way to put it, to bridge the gap. I love that.
Mhm.
And one way that I found was so transformative to get into that peaceful state very quickly was breathing light exercise in the
Mhm.
Buteyko breathing method that we both have studied with Patrick McKeown, and breathing less air. And even through my 15 years of teaching yoga, um, I was never overly keen on the intense ujjayi breathing. Again, I think it's a high jump to ask people, to just start breathing like this initially. So I would always just say, try to breathe equally and create some balance in and out through the nose. Luckily, I knew about nose breathing, but not to the full extent as I further learned with Patrick McGowan. But the breathe light exercise, just breathing less air, was so powerful for me. I was gone off into clouds and fairyland doing that breathing exercise. I thought it was so beautiful and meditative. Is it one that you would practice or recommend to your patients?
On a regular basis.
Yeah.
I mean, I find it very helpful for myself also. I try to incorporate it every day after lunch to really get that non-sleep deep rest with some of the breathing light. Yet I'm very careful with the recommendations with people who got fatigue or any severe medical condition.
Mm,
As also Patrick was talking about, they got a very low chemosensitivity to CO2.
mhm.
So basically, when they try to breathe less air,
Yeah.
they could panic at some point. And that's when I again recommend to do the exercises and learn how to perform the exercises with a breath work coach who is certified in the Buteyko method. I think that's important to mention. And yeah, if you know how to do the exercises, they are mind blowing
Mm.
because it's like a tool. And sure, you will need some time to really get familiar with the exercises, but give it a couple of weeks and you really know how to tap into deep relaxation in just a couple of minutes. And that's great.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and definitely important to note if there's any health conditions.
Mm,
And maybe even if you're not fully aware, to get a health check and get everything checked out. And
mm,
especially in recent years, I know with the COVID virus and with vaccinations, that there has been more common occurrences of heart conditions, maybe some inflammation around the heart and tachycardia. I know some people that have had that, and long COVID, and all of those new issues that
mm,
we have seen that are more common now since all of that. So to really be cautious with breathing exercises, ones that are going to send you into hyperventilation or holding the breath, to be really
mm,
cautious around those breathing exercises, because again, I think they are being fed out to everyone on social media, and you really need to, they need to be tailored and targeted for you to
mm.
do what suits you, and you need to build slowly. So if we're not breathing correctly, which a lot of us are not, um, we need to be really cautious about which ones we're choosing to practice.
Absolutely.
Mm. Um, the the breathing, the Buteyko method is a really great place to start to come back to functional breathing. I think
Mm,
over breathing is a thing that we're seeing a lot of now, and it's because of our stressful lives, I guess. And again, it's something that a lot of us are not even aware of. You know, that breathing in and out through the mouth during the day is not functional. Obviously, when we're talking and eating and other times during the day, we might be breathing in and out through the mouth. But how magic just breathing in and out through the nose is. And even if we can try and retrain ourselves to do that,
mm,
it's
mhm.
medicine right there.
That's a big one. I mean, we got so many, we also do sleep analysis, and there's so many people who snore. So basically breathe through the mouth during sleep. And also sleep apnea is a big one.
Mm,
And to really consider that, I mean, yeah, doctors specialized on sleep should also make sure that they target this. And there are many who do, but there are also things like the myofunctional training Patrick was talking about that are not that backed by science yet, because there are just not so many studies on it. But
mm.
these are exercises just to strengthen the throat muscles basically that could be very important to incorporate on a daily basis just to prevent sleep apnea, for example.
Amazing. The superpower that we have that is really untapped, isn't it? The breath.
Hmm. Hmm.
So general guidelines around the breath, we're saying, check in with your health, get a checkup, and go easy and build slowly, and to make sure that you are in full health before, practicing any intense breathing exercises. Anyone with heart issues, pregnancy, anxiety, you know,
Epilepsy.
epilepsy. Yeah, should really be cautious around the intense ones. What does your own personal well-being self-care routine look like, Christoph?
Oh, that's a good question. I found out in recent years that much of the self-care I do is just some kind of pattern interrupter. So basically, to push negative emotions away and not have to feel them. And that is something I try to work on because, like, inviting every emotion, and every emotion is important. And it's okay to be sad or to be angry or to feel shame, and to really sit with it instead of running away and doing an ice bath or doing an intense Wim Hof breathing session, which I used to do. So this is a big challenge for me right now. And I try to really invite the stillness and the silence and to sit with whatever state comes up. And that happens frequently. Actually, last week, I had a young patient in the doctor's office. She was 25 and just recovering from a COVID infection. And she just wanted a prescription for medication. And I was so in flow that I just kept talking about tapping into the parasympathetic nervous system, self-healing meditation, and breathing exercises to help her cure that dry cough that she was still suffering from. And at some point, she looked at me like this, and I was like, "Okay, what's happening here?" And then she gave me instant feedback, like, "I thought I was in a doctor's office here and not a voodoo temple." And it struck me right in the moment because I did not ask her if she wanted my advice, and that is something in the doctor's role or in many other professions happens quite frequently, where we give advice without really asking
Mm.
or seeing where our client, our patient, our customer is at. And at that point, I really felt like, okay, one step back and to really create that space for someone to open and to invite the advice or invite the patient to ask for the advice they wanted.
I love the self-awareness around that. If they're coming to you for advice, even if you can give them a little consideration around looking after their well-being as well as the medication, it's important.
Mm-hmm. So true.
Um, so for your own well-being and self-care, there's more stillness.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm.
I really, I try to really go out in nature. That helps me a lot to just be. And when I invite the silence, I found that answers will come to whatever just happens. And also to not fall prey to my self-care routine,
Mm.
which can be, yeah, can be sometimes not really helpful when I'm like, okay, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do yoga, I need to do sports, I need to do breath work, I need
Mm.
to do an ice bath. Like self-care can be a stressor too, and to really be aware of what's happening there. And if I really get the space and can invite the self-care to fully emerge in it and not yeah, create more stress by doing it.
That's really important advice, I think, because it's easy to fall into the schedule and the routine and forcing yourself to do it even when your body may not want to. So that
Mhm.
listening aspect is really important because the body will give us messages if we're open to listening.
Beautifully said. Yeah.
And it's not, again, something that it's advice that may surprise people. You know, more stillness and more silence is not often the well-being advice that we get, and really important to digest what's happening in your life and allow emotions to come up. because as you said, you can just numb what's happening by doing and
Mm,
by busy schedules, and that in itself can become addictive. The busyness, always having to have something to do and appointments, and that can become just your natural state of being. So if there's a blank space in your diary or your week, you feel a little bit like, oh, I must fill it, and I must do this, and as you said, do your yoga and your workout and your ice baths and get it all done, and then you will be
mm,
perfect. But
mm,
we're not perfect, and sometimes we are sad and angry, and sometimes we get caught in a rumination space in the brain, and we need to just be aware of it and notice what's happening, and then we can, with that awareness, it allows us to have the ability to step back when we notice. We can't create any changes in our mind state unless we have the quietness first to become aware, and then the awareness to be able to step out of it, or notice what's happening. So it's a really important practice, and a transformative tool is just to listen, to be still, to be aware, and allow yourself to cry if you need to cry. I love a good cry now. And I'm like, don't interrupt it. Don't ask me any questions. I just want to have this cry, and then I will feel nice
mm.
afterwards.
Yeah, beautiful.
And maybe too much in touch with my emotions now, because I will cry easily at at things when they make me sad. But I do think emotion is beautiful, and why should
Mm,
we try and unblock it? Because it's unhealthy. It's an unhealthy
mm,
practice to block emotions, isn't it?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a process also. I mean, I did not cry a lot. That was a big one for me. Like my father was a heart surgeon, and he worked a lot, and he had that perfect yeah, life basically. And I idealized him, and he was never weak. He always pushed through, and he was really doing what he stood for. So crying was a big one for me, to really get into that sadness and to experience it and to let it be without shame or without yeah, feeling weak at that point, in a sense that I don't allow it to be.
Mm.
So
Do you think that's a difficult thing for men in general, is to
mm,
be more vulnerable?
absolutely, absolutely, and has been a big one for me also.
Mm.
Like this year, I don't know if you heard of the Sacred Sons. They're much into men's work right now, coming over from the States and
Yes, I've
growing.
seen something online. I don't know,
Yeah.
was it you or one of the other guys that was at the Buteco training? I think I seen they were at one of their events.
Hmm. That might have been me. I'm doing the leadership training with them right now,
Okay.
and I feel, yeah, that's quite personal, but I feel comfortable with sharing, because that's so important to consider.
Mm.
Like earlier this year, I fell in love, and basically because it didn't work out the way I wanted it to. It broke my heart, and then from heartbreak, I got to heartbreak open, and that's something the Sacred Sons talk a lot about. It's so important for men to really get that idea of love straight. There are some things that are considered to have space in an intimate relationship, but there are essential human needs, like being held, being seen, stuff like that. And it's so important to allow oneself to be seen by others as the person, or I can talk from my perspective, to allow myself to be seen by others for who I am and not what I am. And that's a big one. Like being a doctor, you tell someone, "Hey, I'm a doctor," and they're like, "Ooh." And I'm like, okay, I feel seen as what I am as a doctor, but not as a person, as Christoph, basically.
Mm,
And to really tap into that vulnerability and to see that there are, yeah, sacred containers, they call it, like a safe space to be open, to be vulnerable, and to be witnessed in strong emotions and emotional releases by other men, which I felt I had a lot of competition with in the first place. But right now, I have other men, brothers, whom I can trust and I can share my vulnerability with and get that feeling of being held and being seen. So that is something very important. I would argue for everyone.
mm,
Doesn't matter, and for men especially to tap into that vulnerability and to work with strong feelings like sadness, anger is a big one, frustration also, and shame.
mm. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That was lovely. Um, yeah, it is an important one for any human to allow themselves to be vulnerable, and there's no shame in it. We all have very similar experiences when it comes to life and what happens to us. And when we share it, it opens up this beautiful space um to we can, there's a lovely Irish saying, Níneart go Cork Céile, is there's strength in unity. So we are
Mm,
stronger when we're together.
beautiful.
Um, when we're alone, our hardships and our emotions seem bigger than they are. And it's very isolating and it can be,
Mhm,
you know, really challenging. But if we just share and have someone we can trust or speak with, or even just to have a big hug with, there's
mhm,
so much strength and healing in that. It's
mhm.
powerful.
Indeed.
Coming back to community, really, isn't it? And you found a nice
Hmm.
community there that you feel, safe enough to be vulnerable with.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
And that was a big transition for you coming from, your younger self to
Hmm.
how open and vulnerable you allow yourself to be now.
Hmm.
It's lovely. It's good work.
That's deep conscious work, right? And yeah, being on that journey, really scheduling time to process that. That's very important. And most people don't allow themselves to feel, don't allow themselves to really schedule time with themselves to go through a process like that.
Mm,
And yeah, it's false pretending in many cases. And that, I mean, I know that performance idea quite well. Just stumbled upon a letter from my grandpa a couple of weeks ago. It was basically saying, um, your grandma and I want to congratulate you on your excellent grades. Keep on doing like this, so that we can always be proud of our grandson. And that's I read that letter and I was like, that's a tough one. And
yeah.
there's so many people experiencing exactly the same, and we got these patterns, that conditioning stuck, and it's working in our unconscious. So to really get aware of what is happening there, what is driving me, and to heal these, yeah, basically destructive patterns,
Mm,
comes all to what Gabor Mate is talking about a lot. We don't have a mental health crisis, we do have an emotional health crisis. And it's like, yeah, people are not able to tap into their own emotional being, to feel how they're doing, to sit with it.
mm.
And
Yeah, because we're not our bodies. We leave these bodies behind, and we're not our roles that we play, because we leave them behind as well, and they can change all the time. The roles that we play, the jobs that we have, you know, it might be that you've just fallen into the carer role, and you're that in your family and you're that in your job, and then you don't take time to figure out who you are or what you want or what brings you joy. But when you start doing that, you figure out who you are, who is the real you, and that it might be spirit or soul or consciousness or God. Some people, and it might be not, God as in the religion God, but God as in the divine, your spirituality. In yoga, they would call it your Atman, your soul, or, when you start figuring out who you are as a little baby, where did you come from? What little magic soul appeared from somewhere to grow inside your mother? And, there's so much unknown, and people think, oh, I'm not spiritual and I'm not religious, and we're just here and then we're gone. But where did you come from? There's some unknown there. So why would there not be unknown while we're here, and when our bodies are left here, and when the breath is gone? And where do we go then? There's still unknown, but there's deep souls within us all. Each of us, I know, have a true purpose. And that doesn't necessarily attach to your career or your job or your role in your family or what car you drive or what possessions you have, because that's all just left there when you're gone. And your soul is the memory that people hold. He was so beautiful. He made everyone feel comfortable. He made everyone laugh. He was a really special person. That's what people will remember, is not our roles that we play. I think it's something we forget easily during our busy days, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Well, I think that you have done important work for yourself, and you're doing such important work in your community through your nature, the way that you are as a person. And, there's healing in that alone, is just being with someone who has good energy. So I think that you can create a healing space wherever you go, whether that's in your GP clinic or whether that's through your breathing workshops or your Wim Hof or through your friendships. I think that you can offer that lovely healing space wherever you go.
Well, I'm trying to, yeah.
Maybe that's your true purpose.
Oh, I would agree with that.
Where would you like your work to go to now? Is it more into men's circles?
I'm not really sure about that yet. I think the interesting part is the link, being trained in modern medicine, and also really in mind-body medicine and everything, considering breath work, cold exposure, and now a lot of emotional work. Also looking into psychedelics. That will be a big one in the next couple of years. I'm pretty sure that there will be some form of legalization considering therapeutic use of some psychedelic substances. And yeah, we will see how everything works out. But I feel like there's a big movement right now. People rediscovering their perhaps also their purpose, and also what they are capable of when they really tap into feeling themselves, and to use so many tools for themselves for their own well-being. That is a big one. And I don't consider myself as someone who tells someone what to do, more like accompanying a process of optimizing individual health.
Mm. Sure. I like that. There's definitely a movement happening. I don't know, was it
Mhm.
during lockdown and some people more time to check out of their busy lives and check into themselves and their families and their
Mhm.
communities. And from that, I think there's been a revival. Definitely see it in the west of Ireland. The
Mhm.
sea dipping is just, a
Mhm.
big movement. Breathing has become so popular. There has to be reasons behind all of that, and I think people are reclaiming um their power within.
Mhm.
Our intuition and our power and our wisdom is all within. So
Mhm.
when we start tapping back into that, we do realize our full potential and what we can do
Mhm.
in the world.
Absolutely, and that we're stronger together, like what you were talking about with community building. That is a big one, to really bring people together who are willing to do the work and willing to look at what doesn't feel good in the first place, and to go through it and to grow together.
Beautiful. We'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for the talk and all of your wisdom and sharing so much from your personal and professional life. It was a pleasure speaking to you, Dr. Christoph Geiger.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. You can follow Christoph at dr.christophgeiger on Instagram and myself at moveandbreathe.ie. Thanks for listening.